when Keanu Reeves noticed a scruffy little puppy following him through the empty streets of Los Angeles. He thought it was just another stray. But when he knelt to check its collar, his breath caught. Tucked inside was a crumpled note, a desperate plea for help. What he found next would change his life forever, proving that even the smallest heroes can lead you to the biggest miracles. The streets of Los Angeles were unusually quiet that night. Keanu Reeves walked with his hands tucked into his pockets, the cool air offering little relief from the exhaustion weighing on his shoulders. It had been a long day on set, and all he wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and disappear into the silence of his apartment. But something felt off. A soft pattering sound echoed behind him. He slowed his pace, glancing over his shoulder. A small, scruffy puppy trailed behind him, its golden fur matted with dirt, ribs faintly visible beneath its thin coat. Keanu sighed, shaking his head. "Go home, little guy," he murmured, giving a slight wave of his hand. The puppy tilted its head but didn't stop. Instead, it kept pace with him, keeping a careful distance but never wavering. Keanu walked a little faster. So did the dog. He stopped. So did the dog. The persistence was strange, almost deliberate. There was something in those wide, dark eyes, something beyond hunger or fear, something that felt like desperation. "Look, buddy, I can't take you home," Keanu said, rubbing his face. "I don't have a..." Then he saw it. A worn leather collar barely clung to the puppy's neck. Tucked inside was a small, crumpled piece of paper. Keanu's breath caught as he crouched down, slowly reaching for it. The puppy flinched slightly but didn't run. It just stood there, trembling, waiting. With careful fingers, Keanu unfolded the note under the dim glow of the street lamp. His chest tightened as he read the shaky, uneven handwriting. "Help, my baby brother is sick. No food, no water. Apartment 3B. All thoughts of exhaustion vanished. Keanu looked down at the little dog, who was now staring at him with an almost pleading intensity. Its tail wagged slightly, as if sensing it had finally found the right person. He exhaled sharply, folding the note in his palm. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. He straightened, his pulse quickening. "All right," he said, voice low but firm. "Show me the way." The puppy didn't need to be told twice. It spun on its tiny paws and bolted forward, leading Keanu into the night. The little dog led the way with newfound energy, its tiny paws barely making a sound against the cracked pavement. Keanu followed without question, his heartbeat quickening with every step. The city blurred around him, neon lights, passing cars, distant voices, none of it mattered now. His mind kept circling back to the note. No food, no water. Baby brother is sick. How long had they been alone? How bad was it? The puppy darted around a corner, into a narrow, dimly lit street lined with aging apartment buildings. Keanu kept close, scanning his surroundings. The farther they went, the more the neighborhood changed. Graffiti-covered walls, broken windows patched with cardboard, the unmistakable air of neglect. Finally, the dog stopped in front of a rundown complex. The entrance gate hung off its hinges, and the intercom was nothing more than a rusted box with wires spilling out. The puppy pawed at the threshold, then turned to Keanu, eyes pleading. His stomach tightened. "Before we go further, I want to take a moment to connect with you. My incredible viewers, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments below. And if you've ever felt that unspoken connection with an animal, the kind that defies logic, hit that like button. Because what happens next might just make you believe in miracles." Keanu took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The hallway was dim, the overhead fluorescent lights flickering. The air was thick, stale with something else beneath it. Something rotten, something wrong. He moved quickly, following the numbers on the peeling doors. 3B, third floor. The puppy raced ahead, nails clicking against the linoleum. Keanu's footsteps were heavier, each one carrying the weight of dread. The walls here were different, scratched, dented, stained with things he didn't want to think about. The silence was even worse. He reached 3B and knocked. Firmly. Nothing. He knocked harder. The door rattled in its frame. Still nothing. "Police?" he called out instinctively, then winced. Old habits. He wasn't a cop, but right now, it didn't matter. From the other side, the silence stretched, too thick, too complete. Then, faintly, he heard it. A sound so small, so fragile, he almost missed it. A breath. A whimper. The puppy whined, pawing desperately at the door. Keanu's jaw tightened. He stepped back, squared his shoulders, and kicked. The door gave way with a sharp crack, swinging open into darkness. The smell hit him first. Stale air, mildew, something sour and sickly sweet. He stepped inside, scanning the space, bare walls, an overturned chair, a tattered mattress on the floor. Trash littered the corners, and beyond it all, in the dim glow of a flickering bulb, he saw them. A child, a small boy, maybe 8 years old, crouched in the corner, arms wrapped protectively around a bundle. No, not a bundle. A baby. Keanu's breath caught. The boy's eyes were wide, huge in his gaunt face. His lips cracked, his little hands clutching his sibling as if letting go would mean losing everything. The baby was frighteningly still, only the faintest rise and fall of its chest proving it was still alive. The boy didn't speak, he didn't cry, he just stared. Keanu knelt, hands open, voice low and steady. "Hey there, buddy, I'm Keanu. I'm here to help." The boy flinched, pressing himself further into the corner, gripping the baby tighter. "It's okay," Keanu said softly. "I promise. You don't have to be afraid." The puppy, sensing the boy's fear, crept closer and gently licked his hand. The boy's rigid posture softened, just a fraction, but enough. Keanu moved carefully, inching forward. "Is this your brother?" A slow, almost imperceptible nod. Keanu's throat tightened. "Can I check on him?" The boy hesitated. Then, shaking, he loosened his grip just enough for Keanu to see. The baby's cheeks were hollow, skin flushed with fever, tiny fingers curled weakly in sleep, breathing too shallow, too fast. Keanu didn't wait. "We need to get him to a hospital," he said, already unzipping his jacket, wrapping the baby inside for warmth. "Now." The boy tensed, eyes flashing with panic. "No, you can't take him." Keanu froze. "I'm not taking him away. You're coming too, I promise." The boy blinked, uncertainty flickering behind his exhaustion. Then, as if sensing the truth in Keanu's words, he gave the smallest nod. That was all Keanu needed. He scooped up the baby, reached out his other hand. "Come on, kid, let's get out of here." The boy hesitated, looking from Keanu to the puppy. The little dog gave a short wag of its tail, as if saying, "It's okay, we can trust him." And finally, the boy took his hand. Keanu tightened his grip, pulling them both to their feet. "Let's go," he said, leading them into the night. The night air hit them like a shock of cold water as they stepped out of the apartment building. The city, usually buzzing with life, felt eerily silent, as if holding its breath for what was about to happen. Keanu held the baby close to his chest, feeling the fever burning through the tiny body. The child's breathing was shallow, fragile, each inhale a struggle. Beside him, the boy clutched his jacket with one hand, the other gripping the scruffy fur of the puppy trotting faithfully at his side. His steps were hesitant, but his grip was firm, as if afraid Keanu might disappear if he let go. They had no time to waste. Keanu led them toward his motorcycle, parked a few blocks away. He wasn't sure how long the baby had been without food or water, but judging by the gaunt look on the older boy's face and the way the little one barely stirred, it had been too long. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "Is he gonna die?" Keanu swallowed hard, forcing steel into his voice. "Not on my watch, kid." As they reached his bike, he hesitated. The baby needed warmth, but he couldn't hold him and drive at the same time. He turned to the boy. "Hold him close to your chest. Keep him warm." The boy's eyes widened. "Me? You can do this," Keanu said, kneeling in front of him. "I need you to be strong for your brother. Can you do that?" The boy's thin arms tightened around the baby, nodding fiercely despite the fear in his eyes. Keanu took off his leather jacket, wrapping it carefully around them both before lifting the boy onto the seat in front of him. The puppy whined, pawing at Keanu's leg. "I'll come back for you. I promise," Keanu said, ruffling its fur before securing his helmet over the boy's head. "Right now, I need you to wait here. Can you do that?" The puppy let out a small, reluctant whimper but sat down obediently. Keanu swung his leg over the bike and revved the engine. "Hold on tight." The boy's grip around his waist tightened as they took off, speeding through the deserted streets. Wind whipped past them, but Keanu barely felt it. His focus was razor sharp. Every fiber of his being locked onto getting to the hospital in time. The baby's breaths were shallow against his back, and he pressed the gas harder. Weaving through the city like a shadow cutting through the night. Streetlights flashed past in a blur. The hospital was close. Too far. Not close enough. He pulled up to the emergency entrance. Skidding to a stop. Nurses and doctors were already rushing outside. Drawn by the roaring engine and the urgency in Keanu's eyes. He barely had time to pull off his helmet before the boy clung to him again. His small fingers digging into Keanu's shirt. Don't let them take him away. The boy's voice was sharp with panic. Keanu gripped his shoulders. Steady but firm. They're going to help him. That's all. We're not leaving him. I swear. Reluctantly. The boy nodded. The next few minutes were a blur. Doctors taking the baby. Rushing him inside. Calling out medical terms Keanu barely understood. The hospital swallowed them in fluorescent lights and the beeping of monitors. The cold, sterile smell wrapping around them. The boy didn't let go of Keanu's sleeve. Not once. Keanu sat with him in the waiting area. Feeling the tremors in the boy's body as the adrenaline faded. Hey, Keanu said softly, placing a steady hand on his back. What's your name? The boy hesitated, staring at the floor. His voice was barely audible when he finally spoke. Noah. Keanu nodded. That's a strong name. Noah swallowed. And my brother, his name's Lucas. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. He had names now. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was personal. Minutes passed like hours. Keanu glanced toward the hallway where the doctors had taken Lucas. Was he okay? Had they gotten there in time? And what would happen next? When the social workers arrived, would Noah and Lucas be separated? Would they be placed in another home? Shuffled through a system that might never truly care for them? Noah pressed closer to Keanu's side. His small fingers still gripping the fabric of his shirt. Are they gonna take us away? He whispered. Keanu exhaled, staring at the stark hospital walls. Not if he had anything to say about it. But could he really change their fate? What would he do if someone tried? The sterile hum of the hospital surrounded them. A sharp contrast to the quiet desperation weighing in the air. Keanu sat on the stiff plastic chair in the waiting room. His arm resting protectively around Noah's small shoulders. The boy hadn't let go of his sleeve since they'd arrived. His knuckles white. His thin frame trembling slightly from exhaustion and fear. Lucas had been taken into the emergency unit. Swallowed up by doctors and nurses moving with quiet urgency. Hours had passed, but no one had come to update them. Noah's voice was barely above a whisper. Is he gonna be okay? Keanu tightened his grip. Steady and firm. They're doing everything they can. The boy nodded, but his fingers twisted anxiously into the hem of Keanu's shirt. His body still coiled like a spring ready to snap. A set of double doors swung open, and a doctor in light blue scrubs approached. Her expression was calm but serious. Mr. Reeves? Keanu stood immediately, Noah pressing into his side. How is he? The doctor gave a small, reassuring smile. Lucas is stable. He was severely dehydrated and malnourished. But we've given him fluids and started him on proper nutrition. His fever has gone down. And he's responding well. Keanu exhaled, the tension in his chest loosening slightly. Can I see him? Noah blurted out, his voice filled with both fear and hope. The doctor hesitated. He's still very weak, and we want to monitor him closely for the next 24 hours. But I'll see if we can arrange for you to visit him soon. Noah's shoulders sagged, disappointment flickering across his face. But he nodded in understanding. Then another voice cut through the moment. Excuse me, Mr. Reeves? Keanu turned to see two women in business attire approaching, their badges clipped to their jackets. Social workers. The older woman, a stern-looking lady with neatly tied back hair, offered a professional smile. I'm Sarah Evans from Child Protective Services. This is my colleague, Jenna. We need to discuss the situation with you. Keanu felt Noah tense beside him. The boy's grip tightened, his small fingers digging into Keanu's arm. Sarah's voice was polite, but there was no mistaking the authority in her tone. We appreciate what you've done, but we need to assess where the children should be placed next. Given their circumstances, they'll need to enter the foster system while we locate any remaining family. Keanu's jaw clenched. And if there is no family? Then we'll find a suitable home through the system. She replied smoothly. Noah's breathing became rapid. No. His voice was sharp. Panicked. I don't want to go anywhere. Please. Sarah knelt down slightly, her voice softening. I know this is scary, Noah, but we just want to make sure you and your brother are safe. We're safe with him, Noah shot back, gripping Keanu's arm tighter. I don't want to go with anyone else. Keanu felt a fierce protectiveness rise inside him. He wasn't a father. He hadn't planned for something like this. But the thought of Noah and Lucas being separated, shuffled into the system, possibly never seeing each other again, it made his stomach turn. He turned back to Sarah, his voice steady. What if I take them in? Both social workers blinked in surprise. Sarah frowned. Mr. Reeves, fostering a child isn't a simple process. There are evaluations, home studies, background checks. I understand that, Keanu interrupted. I just want to do whatever it takes to keep them together. Jenna, the younger of the two, glanced at Noah, watching the way the boy clung to Keanu like a lifeline. She hesitated before speaking. We can arrange for temporary guardianship while we go through the proper channels. But it's not permanent. Keanu nodded. Then let's start there. Noah's grip on his arm didn't loosen. But Keanu felt the boy's breathing begin to steady. Sarah still looked unconvinced. We'll need to do an immediate evaluation of your home. Fine. When? She checked her watch. First thing tomorrow morning. Keanu exhaled. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but eventually nodded. All right, we'll process the emergency guardianship paperwork overnight. For now, I suggest you take Noah home and let him rest. Keanu turned to the boy. You okay with that? Noah glanced toward the hallway where Lucas had been taken, uncertainty flickering in his tired eyes. But when he looked back at Keanu, something steadied in his expression. Yeah, he whispered. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. Then let's go home. The drive back was silent. Noah sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, his small hands folded in his lap. When they reached Keanu's home, he hesitated at the doorstep, his eyes darting around as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to step inside. Keanu knelt beside him. You don't have to be scared here, kid. You can stay as long as you need. Noah nodded slightly, stepping inside with cautious movements. The house was warm, quiet, too big for one person. But maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't feel so empty anymore. The puppy, waiting faithfully by the door, let out an excited bark and rushed toward Noah, tail wagging furiously. Noah let out a breath, sinking to the floor as the little dog smothered him in affection. For the first time since they met, Keanu saw the smallest hint of a smile cross the boy's face. And for the first time in a long time, Keanu felt something shift inside him. Maybe this wasn't just about saving them. Maybe they were saving him, too. The house was silent except for the soft tapping of the puppy's paws against the hardwood floor. Noah stood just inside the doorway, his small frame barely taking up any space in the large open living room. He clutched the oversized jacket Keanu had given him, his eyes darting uncertainly around the unfamiliar home. Keanu placed the keys on the counter and crouched to unlace his boots. His voice calm, unhurried. You hungry, kid? Noah hesitated, then gave a small nod. Keanu motioned toward the kitchen. Come on, let's see what we can find. The boy followed, his footsteps light, almost hesitant, as if afraid of disturbing something. The puppy trotted beside him, tail wagging, as though sensing its job wasn't over yet. Keanu opened the fridge, scanning the shelves. He paused, realizing he hadn't really stocked up on kid-friendly food. Okay, so, eggs, cheese, some leftover pasta, not exactly a feast. But we can make something work. Noah shifted on his feet. You got peanut butter? Keanu grinned, grabbing a jar from the pantry. Now that, I do have. Minutes later, Noah sat at the kitchen island, eating a peanut butter sandwich like it was the best thing he'd had in years. Maybe it was. He chewed slowly, methodically, but his eyes never left Keanu, as if still trying to figure him out. Keanu leaned against the counter, taking a sip of water. You're a pretty brave kid. You know that? Noah's shoulders tensed slightly. I'm not, he muttered. Could have fooled me, Keanu said. You took care of your brother. Kept him safe. That takes guts. Noah's fingers tightened around the crust of his sandwich. Didn't have a choice. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the hum of the refrigerator. If I didn't, no one else would. Keanu felt a familiar ache settle in his chest. He knew that feeling, the weight of responsibility no child should have to carry. You don't have to do it alone anymore, he said softly. Noah glanced up at him, suspicion flickering behind tired eyes. For how long? Keanu held his gaze. For as long as you need. Something in the boy's expression shifted, not trust. Not yet, but something close. The meal was simple, but Noah ate every last bite. When he was done, he carried his plate carefully to the sink, as if unsure of the rules in this new place. Keanu took it from him before he could start washing. I got it, kid, you've done enough for one day. Noah hovered for a moment, then gave a small nod. Keanu ruffled the boy's hair lightly. Come on, let's get you set up for the night. He led Noah to the spare bedroom, simple, but warm, fresh sheets, a thick comforter, a nightlight glowing softly in the corner. He had thrown it together last minute, but now, looking at Noah's hesitant expression, he wished he'd done more. The boy stepped inside cautiously, running his fingers over the edge of the bed. It's yours, Keanu said, for as long as you're here. Noah didn't answer. Instead, he walked past the bed and curled up on the floor. Keanu frowned. Kid, it's fine, Noah interrupted. His voice was steady, but there was something painfully practiced about it. I'm used to it. Keanu exhaled slowly, crouching down so they were at eye level. Not here, you're not. Noah stared at the floor. Keanu stood, walked over to the bed, and sat down. Tell you what, I'll stay right here until you fall asleep. Deal? Noah eyed him warily, but after a long moment, he slowly climbed into the bed. He lay stiffly on his side, his small hands gripping the blanket like it might disappear. Keanu leaned back, resting his arms on his knees. You want the door open or closed? Open, Noah murmured. Okay. The puppy, as if sensing the moment, jumped up onto the bed and curled against Noah's side. The boy let out a quiet breath, his fingers tentatively brushing against its soft fur. Minutes passed. The tension in Noah's shoulders slowly eased. His breathing deepened. Keanu watched as exhaustion finally won, pulling the boy into sleep. He stayed a little longer than he needed to, just watching, making sure. Then, quietly, he stood, flicked off the overhead light, and stepped into the hallway. For the first time in a long time, his house didn't feel quite so empty. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, casting warm golden streaks across the countertops. The house was quiet, still wrapped in the softness of dawn. Keanu moved around the kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee mixing with the faintest hint of peanut butter from the night before. He wasn't much of a cook, but breakfast seemed like something simple enough to get right. A quiet shuffling sound made him turn. Noah stood in the doorway, his hair sticking up in different directions, his oversized t-shirt hanging loosely over his thin frame. He hesitated, one foot slightly behind the other, as if unsure whether he was allowed to be here. Morning, kid, Keanu said, keeping his voice light. You like pancakes? Noah blinked, as if the question caught him off guard. I don't know. Keanu frowned slightly but didn't push. Well, let's find out. He flipped another pancake onto the growing stack and motioned toward a seat at the island. Take a seat. The boy moved cautiously, sitting down with an air of uncertainty, his hands resting in his lap. The puppy trotted in behind him, tail wagging, before curling up at his feet. Keanu slid a plate in front of him. Go ahead. Noah picked up his fork and cut into the pancake slowly, almost suspiciously. He took a bite, chewing thoughtfully, as if he were trying to decide if he liked it or not. Keanu watched as something flickered across the boy's face, a quiet satisfaction. Maybe even a small sense of comfort. Not bad? Keanu asked. Noah gave a tiny shrug. It's good. Good, Keanu echoed, taking a sip of coffee. Because I made a whole stack. They ate in silence for a while. But it wasn't the heavy, tense kind of silence Keanu had come to expect. It was something different, something lighter. Noah didn't rush through his food like he was afraid it might be taken away. He didn't stuff extra bites into his pockets. He just ate. Halfway through his plate, Noah finally spoke. What time are we going back to see Lucas? Keanu set his mug down. Soon. They're still keeping him for observation. But we'll be there before lunch. Noah nodded, pushing a stray piece of pancake around his plate. Okay. Keanu could see the worry etched in the boy's face. The way his brows pulled together just slightly. The way his fingers tapped lightly against the table. He wasn't just waiting for his brother to get better. He was waiting for something worse, waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to come and take everything away again. Keanu wasn't about to let that happen. After breakfast, they headed back to the hospital. The ride was quiet, Noah staring out the window, lost in thought. When they arrived, the boy practically jumped out of the car before it even came to a full stop. Hurrying inside, Keanu followed, catching up as Noah rushed down the hallway toward Lucas's room. The sight inside made Noah freeze. Lucas was awake, his tiny body, still wrapped in hospital blankets, looked impossibly small against the large bed. But his eyes were open, brighter than before, and when he saw Noah, his tiny fingers twitched in recognition. "Hey, buddy," Noah breathed, stepping forward cautiously. Lucas made a small, soft sound, not quite a word, but enough to let Noah know he was there. Keanu stood back, watching as Noah hesitated at the bedside before carefully reaching out, his fingers barely brushing against his brother's tiny hand. Lucas's hand curled weakly around one of Noah's fingers. Something broke in Noah's expression. His shoulders sagged with relief, his head dipping forward as if the weight of the past few days had finally caught up to him. "He's okay," Noah whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Keanu let them have their moment. He knew what it felt like to carry something too heavy for too long. He also knew what it felt like to finally set it down. A quiet knock on the door made them both look up. Sarah, the social worker, stood there, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. Noah tensed immediately. His grip on Lucas tightened, his small body stiffening as if bracing for a fight. Keanu stepped forward before the boy could panic. "Sarah." His voice was calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. She nodded. "Mr. Reeves, may I have a word?" Keanu glanced back at Noah. "I'll be right outside." The boy didn't look convinced, but he nodded reluctantly. Keanu followed Sarah into the hallway, folding his arms across his chest. "If you're here to tell me they're going into the system, save it." Sarah exhaled, tapping her pen against her clipboard. "The home inspection went well. Your place is more than suitable." "Then what's the problem?" She hesitated. "Noah has been through a lot. Lucas, too. We need to be sure they're in a stable, long-term environment." Keanu's voice was firm. "I am that environment." Sarah studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Then let's make it official." Keanu felt something settle in his chest, something solid, something real. When he stepped back into the hospital room, Noah looked up at him, his face filled with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "What did she say?" Keanu crouched in front of him, meeting his wide, tired eyes. "She said you're coming home with me." For the first time, real and unguarded, Noah smiled. The drive home from the hospital was quiet, but it wasn't the same tense silence as before. It was different now, softer, lighter. Noah sat in the passenger seat, his hands folded carefully in his lap, staring out the window. The weight of uncertainty still lingered in his eyes. But for the first time since Keanu had met him, there was something else, too, something fragile but real. Hope. Lucas was staying in the hospital for a few more days, but he was safe, stable. That was all that mattered. And now, Noah had a place to go that wasn't a cold, empty apartment. Keanu glanced over at him. "You all right, kid?" Noah gave a small nod. "Yeah, you sure?" Another nod. Then, after a pause, "Are you?" Keanu let out a quiet chuckle. "Haven't figured that out yet." That made Noah glance at him, his brows furrowing slightly, as if he wasn't sure whether Keanu was joking or not. The house felt different when they walked in. Maybe it was just because there were two of them now. Maybe it was because, for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel quite so empty. The puppy was waiting at the door, its tail thumping excitedly against the floor. As soon as Noah stepped inside, it launched itself at him, licking his face, pawing at his chest as if scolding him for leaving. All right, Noah muttered, rubbing behind its ears. "I told you I'd come back." Keanu watched the scene unfold, something warm settling in his chest. "You should give him a name," he said. Noah hesitated, glancing down at the tiny ball of fur that had, quite literally, saved his life. He ran his fingers through its scruffy coat, thinking. Finally, he murmured, "Hero." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Hero?" Noah shrugged, a little self-conscious. He found you, didn't he? Brought you to us. If he hadn't, his voice trailed off. He didn't finish the sentence. But he didn't have to. Keanu nodded. Hero it is. The puppy seemed to approve, wagging its tail harder than ever. That night, Keanu set up a bed for Noah again. But just like before, the boy didn't climb into it. Instead, he curled up on the floor. Hero nestled against his side. Keanu leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching him. You know, that bed isn't a trap, he said. Noah didn't open his eyes. I know. So why won't you use it? A long silence stretched between them. Then, quietly, beds aren't safe. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't ask what that meant. He already knew. He could have told Noah that this was different. That here, he was safe. But words didn't mean much to kids who had spent their whole lives being let down. So instead, Keanu just nodded. All right, kid, whatever makes you comfortable. He flicked off the light. But before he could step out, Noah spoke again. You're not gonna change your mind, right? Keanu turned back. About what? Noah swallowed. About us staying. Keanu crouched down, resting his arms on his knees. Not a chance. Noah searched his face for a long time, looking for cracks, for dishonesty, for anything that might mean this was just another temporary stop on a long road of disappointments. But he didn't find any. Slowly, he nodded. Keanu ruffled his hair. Get some sleep, kid. As he walked back to his own room, he realized something. It wasn't just Noah and Lucas who had needed saving. Maybe, in some way, Keanu had needed them too. The days following Lucas's release from the hospital passed in a quiet rhythm. An unfamiliar but welcome kind of normalcy. Keanu had expected chaos, sleepless nights, tantrums, fear, but instead, the house settled into something resembling peace. Lucas, though still weak, was recovering well, his small giggles filling the spaces that had once been empty and quiet. Noah had started to let his guard down. Little by little, he no longer flinched at sudden noises, no longer hesitated before taking food from the fridge. He still slept on the floor. But now, he left his blanket on the bed instead of the cold hardwood. Small steps. One evening, Keanu stood at the stove, stirring a pot of pasta while Lucas babbled from his high chair. Noah sat at the table, absently flipping through a book. Hero curled at his feet. You good with spaghetti? Keanu asked, glancing over his shoulder. Noah shrugged. Yeah, I guess. Keanu smirked. Tough crowd. Noah rolled his eyes, but Keanu didn't miss the faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, the closest thing to a smile he'd seen all day. A knock at the front door shattered the easy atmosphere. Hero lifted his head, ears perking up. Keanu wiped his hands on a dish towel. You expecting someone, kid? Noah's expression had changed instantly. The relaxed look he'd carried just moments ago vanished, replaced by something colder, sharper. No, he said, voice tight. Keanu's gut twisted. Something felt wrong. He stepped toward the door, his instincts on high alert. When he opened it, he found himself staring at a woman standing just beyond the threshold. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes wrinkled as if she'd slept in them for days. Her eyes, rimmed with exhaustion, flickered past Keanu immediately, searching, and then they landed on Noah. Noah, who had frozen in place the moment he saw her. A beat of silence. Then she spoke. Noah, baby, the woman whispered, her voice cracking. It's me. It's Mom. Keanu felt his entire body go rigid. Behind him, he heard the sharp inhale of breath. He didn't have to turn to know that Noah had gone completely still. The woman took a shaky step forward, hands trembling. I've been looking for you. I didn't mean to, her words faltered. And she pressed a hand to her mouth. I'm so sorry. Keanu barely registered his own movements as he instinctively stepped between them, blocking her view of Noah. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. What do you want? She blinked at him, as if noticing him for the first time. I just want to see my boys. Keanu didn't move. You abandoned them. Her breath hitched. I didn't mean to. I was trying to get help. I wasn't thinking straight. She reached up, brushing at the tears spilling down her face. I know I messed up. I need to fix it. I want my sons back. Behind him, he felt Noah take a step back. Keanu turned slightly, just enough to see the boy's expression. Noah wasn't crying. He wasn't shaking. but his hands had clenched into fists at his sides, his knuckles turning white. Keanu turned back to the woman. Noah isn't a decision you get to change your mind about. Her face twisted with pain. Please, she whispered. I'm their mother. Keanu could feel Noah's stare burning into the side of his face. He knew this wasn't his decision to make, not really. So he stepped aside. Not far, just enough to let Noah see her fully. The boy's voice was quiet. Steady. You left us. His mother flinched. I know. Baby. I know. But you left. Noah repeated, his voice sharp now, shaking with something Keanu hadn't heard from him before. Anger. You said you'd be right back. Noah whispered, his throat tightening. I sat by the door for hours. You never came. His eyes, dark and unreadable, locked onto hers. You never came. The woman shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared. I thought, you didn't think about us. Noah cut in. You didn't care what happened to us. Her lip trembled. That's not true. Yes, it is. A silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Then Noah exhaled. It was slow, controlled, like he was letting something go. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer filled with anger. Just certainty. I don't need you anymore. The words landed like a physical blow. His mother stumbled back a step. Noah. Keanu moved before she could say another word. I think you should leave. She looked up at him, something broken in her gaze. You don't understand. I understand plenty, Keanu said, his voice sharp now. Noah made his choice. You don't get to change that. The woman let out a choked sob. For a second, it seemed like she might argue, might try to push her way inside. But then she looked at Noah. Really looked at him. And whatever she saw there made her shoulders sag in defeat. She wiped at her face, nodded once, and without another word, she turned and walked away. Keanu watched her go, the door still open, the night air cold against his skin. Then, finally, he turned back to Noah. The boy was still standing there, fists still clenched, his breathing still shallow. Keanu knelt in front of him, lowering himself to eye level. You okay? Noah didn't answer at first. He was staring at the spot where she had stood, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, his fists uncurled, and he let out a breath. Yeah, he said softly, I think I am. Keanu studied him, searching for any cracks, any hidden hurt, but there was something different about Noah now. Something stronger, something free. Keanu nodded. Come on, kid, let's go home. And this time, when Noah stepped inside, there was no hesitation. Keanu Reeves and the Stray Dog. The final chapter. A family for life. The door clicked shut, sealing out the night, but the weight of what had just happened still clung to the air. Noah stood frozen in the entryway, fists clenched at his sides, his breath coming in shallow, uneven bursts. His mother was gone, this time. For good. No more waiting by the door. No more hoping for something that would never come. Hero nudged his hand, letting out a quiet whimper. Keanu watched as Noah slowly exhaled and sank to the floor, running his fingers through the scruffy fur. She's really gone, Noah murmured, his voice hollow. Keanu crouched beside him. Yeah, kid, she is. Noah swallowed hard, staring at the floor. I thought it would hurt more. Keanu studied him. Does it? Noah was silent for a long moment, then shook his head. No, it just feels over. Keanu nodded. That's okay. They sat there in the quiet for a while, Hero pressing against Noah's side, a steady presence grounding him in the moment. Finally, Keanu stood and held out a hand. Come on, let's get some hot chocolate. Noah hesitated, then took it. The warmth of the drink filled the kitchen with a soft, familiar scent. Noah curled his hands around the mug, staring at the swirls of steam. I don't want to go anywhere else, he said, voice small but firm. Not a foster home, not with strangers. I want to stay here. With Lucas. With you. Keanu didn't hesitate. Then we'll make it happen. Before Noah could respond, a knock came at the door. Keanu opened it to find Sarah Evans, the social worker, holding a thick folder. I know tonight was a lot, she said gently, stepping inside, but we need to talk about what happens next. Noah's grip on his mug tightened. I already told you, I'm staying. Keanu placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. And I already told him. I'm not letting him go. Sarah studied them both, then exhaled. Then let's make it official. She slid the folder onto the table. Legal guardianship. Temporary at first, but if everything works out, full custody. Noah's eyes widened. Like, forever? Sarah nodded. Keanu turned to him. It's your call, kid. Noah didn't need to think twice. He grabbed the pen and, with a steady hand, signed his name. Keanu watched, his chest tightening. This wasn't just paperwork. This was a boy choosing to believe in something again. Noah set the pen down, then looked up at Keanu. His voice was quiet, hesitant. Can we go home now, Dad? The word knocked the air from Keanu's lungs. He swallowed hard, his throat tight, then ruffled Noah's hair with a soft chuckle. Yeah, kid, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Let's go home. The weeks that followed weren't perfect, but they were real. Noah still had nightmares sometimes. But now, when he woke up in a cold sweat, he wasn't alone. Lucas was getting stronger every day, giggling whenever Hero licked his tiny fingers. Keanu's once quiet house was now filled with laughter, baby babbles, and the occasional shouting match over whether pancakes or waffles were better. And one crisp autumn morning, as Keanu flipped pancakes at the stove, Noah wandered into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He sat down, grabbing a plate without hesitation, something he never would have done before. Keanu slid a fresh pancake onto his plate. So, big day today. Noah blinked up at him. Yeah? Keanu smirked. Yeah, court hearing. Judge signs the papers, and it's all official. Noah stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then, without a word, he got up, walked over, and wrapped his arms around Keanu's middle. It was the first hug Noah had ever given him. Keanu didn't say anything, he just held the boy close, his heart swelling with something bigger than words. Later that day, standing before a judge, Noah was asked one final question. Noah, do you want Keanu Reeves to be your legal father? The boy didn't hesitate. Yeah, he said, his voice clear. I do. And with that, the judge signed the papers. It was done. Keanu ruffled Noah's hair as they walked out of the courthouse, Hero trotting happily at their side. Lucas cooed in Keanu's arms, completely unaware that this day had changed everything. So, Keanu mused, waffles or pancakes for dinner? Noah grinned. Both. Keanu laughed. Both it is. And for the first time in a long time, Noah wasn't looking back. He was home. Forever. How did this story touch your heart? If you loved the journey of Keanu, Noah, Lucas, and Hero, drop a number 2 in the comments below. If you feel differently, that's okay too. Comment number 7 and share your thoughts. And if you want to hear more heartfelt, emotional stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to Tapestry of World today. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an incredible story. Thank you for watching and being part of this journey. I can't wait to read your comments.